This is my identity, this is who I am, I'm a Muslim. We'd learn about Islam in religious studies and I would get the highest grade in the class. If you're real, I'm going to hell. I'd recite the Quran, not because I delighted in the Quran, but because I wanted to please my mum. Being like, do not preach to my son. You'll no longer be my son. I just felt like my heart just sink.
Why? Like why? Why on earth is it worth it?
I would die for this gospel. And if this really happened, then what Jesus said is really true. And if what Jesus says is really true, then I should follow it.
So tell me, family, first generation migrants from Iraq.
Yeah.
You were born in the UK.
Born in the UK, yeah.
As a second generation.
Yeah.
Tell me, what was that like culturally growing up as a second generation?
Well, to be honest, my upbringing as a Muslim was not the strongest. I wouldn't go as far as to say that I was a nominal Muslim. I was definitely brought up by my parents, especially by my sister, to read the Quran, to pray, to fast during Ramadan. I always was told. I was living in a very Muslim household, and as a Muslim growing up, I'd always been sort of infatuated by Islam. I was, as a child, I always believed everything my parents told me. So I'd even go to, I went to madrasa once, and what madrasa is basically just an Arabic school. They teach you Quran. I used to have Quran lessons online. I wasn't the biggest fan of them, but yeah, that's kind of my earliest remembering of it.
And what was your earliest memory?
My earliest memory of being a Muslim, I guess, was me and my sister in her room, and she was teaching me this chapter in the Quran called Surah Yusuf, and it's about the story of Joseph in the Bible, in the Torah. And I just remember that was my favorite story. Like, my sister would always tell it to me, and I would be so I'd be so engaged in what she was saying. This guy is thrown into a well, and his brothers and all of that. And I just remember sort of that is the earliest memory that I have of the Quran. It does, honestly, when I think about it, it's so nostalgic. But yeah.
Can you still recite it?
Surah Yusuf?
Yeah.
Nah, I can't recite that one. That one's really long. I can recite sort of the ones that are shorter, shorter sort of surahs. But that one was really long.
Yeah.
Like an hour.
I guess from that point, how did you grow up Islamically?
I was encouraged, as a child, as like a small child. My parents didn't really expect much from me. They didn't really expect me to read my Quran as an 8-year-old child, for example. I was always told. When things really got interesting was when my sister got married to now my brother-in-law. He had a very big influence on the family in terms of Islam. My sister all of a sudden she was already quite Islamic, but she went from quite Islamic to really taking the Quran seriously and taking Islam seriously, which came as a shock. Not a shock, but sort of a little bit of a surprise to me at the time. My brother-in-law would always, encourage me to pray with him during Ramadan. When I was 13 was the first time I had ever fasted a full Ramadan, even though I didn't really do it properly. But I mean, he would really push me and encourage me to go into Islam. And that's as well when my sister looked into getting me a Quran tutor online. There was a guy on Egypt. I used to FaceTime him on the laptop, and he'd teach me Arabic, he'd teach me the Quran. We went to Egypt, and I'd literally every day I'd be praying 5 times a day. I would be eating halal food, everything. Like, when my brother-in-law married my sister, that really brought Islam more in my upbringing. Yeah.
And you and your sister were very close.
Very close. At the time, very, very close. And at the time, as a 13-year-old, right, I wanted to make my sister proud, make my mum proud, make my dad proud, make my brother-in-law proud. And that was one of the prime reasons why I would do it, because like I remember I would memorize a chapter in the Quran, let's say like Surah Al-Ghashiyah. I memorized that and it was like 3 minutes long. And I remember like we were doing, during prayer time, I was leading the prayer and I just recited the whole thing. And everyone was like, wow, you're so good at reciting, like mashallah. And that brought joy to me at the time, because I was like, I'm actually like the guy. I'm actually the guy. I'm reciting like surahs that are like 3 minutes long. Come on. And my goal was to like memorize the entire of the 30th juz, which is like a section of the Quran.
Yeah.
So yeah, when my brother-in-law came, I was at the time 13 years old. This was prime Abraham in his Islamic era. I was in my prime. So.
And that must have brought you and your sister together even more.
Yeah, it did. It really did. And my mum and my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this sort of binded the family together.
Definitely.
Yeah. So then from 13-year-olds onwards, what started to happen?
So I was 13 and I was really on fire for Islam. When lockdown came, I was starting to get into like sport a lot more.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like trying to like get bigger, because I was literally a twig, right? So I needed to put on some size.
Yeah.
So I was like eating more, going to the gym, all that stuff, as an adolescent does, right? And lockdown came, and I remember there was a lockdown, and it was during Ramadan. And this particular lockdown, I remember saying to my brother-in-law and to my sister, I don't want to fast this Ramadan. I don't want to, because like I'm trying to like put on size. I'm trying to like get bigger. I'm going to lose all my muscle, which is like kind of dry, right? Like it's kind of dry. Like if I were to say I don't want to pray because like of this, that, and the other, that's just so dry.
Yeah.
But that was my reasoning at the time, at that specific point in time.
How old were you?
I was 13. So
13
I was
at that
13
point.
to 14.
Okay.
So I was like, I don't want to fast. I'm going to lose all my muscle, all the gains that I've got. I ended up having to fast, but I kind of cheated. So I didn't actually like fast properly. So what I used to do, right, is and if my parents are watching this, I'm so cooked. But I used to get stashes of like biscuits, and I'd put them, and my bed opens up, so I'd put them underneath the bed. And so my parents are key workers at the time of lockdown, so I used to go into school, and my parents didn't know I was doing at school. So I used to just eat all the lunch. I would eat so much, and I'd also eat in the morning.
Right, because you'd get up with everyone else and have the meal.
I'd get up, I'd have fajr, but I'd also get up again.
Yeah.
So I'd wake up at 12 with my brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Scoff down like a massive bowl of cereal, go back to bed, then wake up at fajr, scoff down something else, pray with my brother-in-law, go to bed. My stomach at this point is like huge.
Yeah.
And then I wake up the next morning, I quickly go to the toilet, scoff down some water when the door is locked, go to school, scoff down, like I used to like maybe sneak an apple or something, like, and then lunch came, scoff it down. Iftar came, well, when I got home, I just like again go to the tap and drink from the tap. And then when iftar came, which is when you break your fast, again I'd scoff down, and then the cycle repeats. And over that Ramadan, I gained like 10 to 15 kilograms. I went from 53 to like 63 or 65 or something like that. Right. I gained so much weight. And
is that before you were an athlete? What stage were you at then in terms of training?
Well, it was before. I mean, so at the moment I'm a track and field athlete. I didn't really take track and field seriously back then. Okay. Back then was more tennis. But even tennis, I wasn't really like competing or anything. I was just trying to be more sporty as a 13, 14-year-old kid. So yeah, I thought I was doing great, but I actually gained quite a lot of weight. Yeah, it wasn't great. So yeah, 13-year-old, I was on fire, but then I just didn't want to do it anymore there was this thing in my mind that's like, even like memorizing surahs, I used to think to myself, why am I memorizing this? Like this is a little bit odd or strange. You know.
Well, you also taught how to interpret it.
That's the thing, I wasn't. And I do think Muslims today would look down on that, to be honest. Like, you know, if, you know, let's say there's quite a staunch Muslim father raising his son up, I would be very surprised if he would teach him the Quran and not teach him the interpretation. I do think that is a very big reason as to why I left Islam, you know, because I had never understood. So I understood to a very, very basic level, but never to the level that I have now, for example, of the Bible. Interpretation verse by verse. Yeah.
Okay. So at this point, you're memorizing scriptures, and you're like, I don't really want to do this anymore. You're having to fast, and you're sort of doing it to show to your family that you're on board.
Yeah.
But inwardly, you don't care about it.
No, I don't. For me, the pleasure came from pleasing my family.
Yeah.
I used to memorize surahs, and I would do a voice recording to my mum or to my brother-in-law, and I'd say, look at me, I'm memorizing surahs, come on, yes, I'm memorizing, look, I'm actually doing well. But like, did that actually bring me joy? Did the actual recitation of the surah, did the actual reading of the Quran bring me joy? I don't think so. No way. It was when my parents, I got the pleasure from that. I didn't get the pleasure from reading the Quran and, this is God's word, yes. No, this was just, I wanted to please my parents. I'd always wanted to please my parents. My mum had such high expectations of me, academically and in everything that I did. And this was just another thing for me.
Okay. But then from that point, your problems with Islam became more personal.
Yeah.
Right, tell us about that.
Well, I'd always been taught from an early age, right, that at the day of judgment, it's going to be like a scale. You're going to have good deeds and you're going to have bad deeds, and they're weighed up on the scale. And whether you go to Jannah or you go to hell, it depends on the good deeds that you've done versus the bad deeds that you've done. And for me, as a 14-year-old now, 13 still, maybe 14, I was against fasting because I wanted to keep my gains. I stopped praying because I was like, what am I doing? And I also didn't see any reason to pray either, to be honest. I was like, there's no point in this. I sort of, in terms of this whole good deeds, bad deeds thing, I would look at my life and I would conclude that actually I'm doing more bad deeds than I am doing good deeds, right? Like, I would see that the good things that I do, I'd be doing for the wrong reasons. So even the good deeds that I did, I'd do them for the wrong reasons. I'd do them to show off. You know, like, I'd recite the Quran, not because I delighted in the Quran, but because I wanted to please my mum. That's not the right reason to read the Word of God, right? And I had a really big problem as well as a teenager with sin. I didn't really know what sin was, but I would just know I'm doing something wrong. I'm living a bad life. I'm not being a good Muslim, quote unquote. And I started to detach myself a little bit from it. Like, I started to sort of resent God in a way. I would see things happening in my life. I had a bit of a temper issue as well, to be honest, at some point. I'd get really annoyed at stuff and I'd literally put the finger at God and be like, and I was like, right, you want me to fast, you want me to pray, you want me to be a good person when I'm not a good person. What am I supposed to do? Like, if you're real, I'm going to hell. And if you're not real, it doesn't matter. So I'm just not going to believe. Because for me, at that point in time, there was no reason to believe in the Quran.
Why did that sense of like guilt, unworthiness not lead you to obedience? do you think?
I think it's because I didn't really believe in it in the first place. Like, I don't think the way that I was brought up, when I would read the Quran, yes, I would recite it. Yes, I would try and please my parents and live a good Muslim life. But actually, what I was doing was not grounded. There was no root. There was no like, this is the truth. So as soon as there was a problem, I just abandoned it straight away. There was no need for me to go back to it because, you know, I remember someone in my family, I can't remember who it was. I think it was some sort of cousin. They were like, "Oh wow, well, you should go back to Islam," because people were already seeing that I'd stopped praying. I didn't want to fast.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't living a good Muslim life. And they asked me, "Go back to Islam." And in my head, I was thinking, "Go back to what? What did I have in the first place? I didn't have anything in the first place. There's nothing to go back to.
Yeah.
This is just how it's been. I've been pretending the whole time, pretty much, or that's how it felt like anyways." I didn't see a sense of meaning to it, which is why I don't think there was any need for me to go back to anything.
Yeah. Okay. So then I guess fast forward a couple of years of that and you're at athletics.
Yeah.
And you meet someone.
Yeah. I mean, so, yeah, for context, sort of, I was quite sporty. Between 14 to 15, I was really leveling up in like my fitness levels. And my school started noticing this, and I'm a long jumper now, and they realised that back then. So I'd always win the competitions. So then I went to a track, group of coaches saw me and they were like, "Oh, you should give this a go." So I was like, all right. After my GCSEs had finished, they just finished, I started training with this coach who's still my coach. And I met someone in September. So I'd been training with him in June, July. So I'd been with him for a couple of months now. And I met this girl at training. I'd never met her before. And I didn't even know who she was, really. But all I knew was that she was quite nice. Over a couple of weeks, couple of months with training with her, I got to know her more and more and more. And she asked for my Instagram. And as a 16-year-old boy, I was like, come on! I was like, no way a girl actually likes me. Because I never got any attention from females. So I was like, yes. And yeah, I think at the time, I was buzzing. So, we text all the time. And I very quickly found out that she was a Christian. I remember there was a phone call we had, and she was talking about Christianity. And I got the sense that she kind of liked me. And inside, even though I didn't really believe in Islam, I didn't really have any meaning to it. For some reason, I was like, you can't do this. You cannot date this girl. I remember she didn't ask me, but she sort of said that she liked me. And I was like, yeah, I got the sense, but I can't date you because I'm Muslim and you're a Christian, and Muslims can't date Christians. Or they can, but there's certain criteria, right? So for me, I was at that time, for some reason, I didn't believe in any Islam, but I was like, no.
Was that, how much of that do you think was that you were still trying to please your parents?
Yeah, it was definitely my parents, right? I knew back then, this is probably not going to work, right?
Yeah.
Like, this girl is a Christian, I'm technically still a Muslim, right? I didn't believe in Islam, but I'd still go along to stuff, right? I didn't care. If they wanted me to pray, I'd pray. If they wanted me to fast, well, fasting, maybe not so much. But like, if they wanted me to go and pray or go to a mosque, I'd happily go, right? I didn't care. I was very happy identifying myself as a Muslim, even though I didn't believe it. But, marrying a Christian, I'd be looked down upon quite a lot from my parents. Which is the main reason I was just like, no, this is not, I can't. That quickly went
disappeared. Yeah, of course it did.
Disappeared. Like literally, like 1 or 2 weeks later. yeah, we were talking more and more and more. And, you know, just from relentless talking, I again quickly found out she went to church and all of this stuff, and her parents were pastors at a church. And so, you know, this sort of was a big, much more big of a deal than I thought it was. Because my parents as well were a little bit sort of, they had their eyes open, especially my mum. Because my mum had spoken to this girl's parents, and my mum knew that they were quite advanced. They were up in the church, you know, they knew their stuff. And so my mum was a little bit worried about me. I remember there was one particular time, I can't remember why I got this text, but her mum sent me a text, and I think it was some sort of prayer, something like that. And I was like, oh, that's so nice. And I showed it to my mum. And it was using words like Lord and, you know, like, and my mum read it. And at the time she was like, oh, that's so nice. But she was a bit off. Turns out she'd sent a message to her mum being like, do not preach to my son. So this is early on, my mum found out already that this girl is a Christian. Her parents are Christian. They're sending me words like Lord. So my mum was alarmed, like really alarmed. So now all of a sudden, I'm talking to this girl. I end up asking her out in January, somewhere between December and January of 2022, 2023. And yeah, I'm in this relationship, and I'm just like, this is kind of cooked. My mum was fuming at me, fuming. So yeah, I was still a Muslim. I wasn't a Christian back then. I was quite adamant. My mum would be telling me, you know, she's going to convert you to Christianity, this, that, and the other. And I was like, no, she won't. Come on, she's not going to convert me to Christianity. I'm not going to. Come on, are you serious? You know, I was quite adamant. We'd have conversations about Islam and Christianity. I remember this one particular phone call that we had actually, and we were comparing. It was like, what's the most beautiful verse in the Quran, and what's the most beautiful verse in the Bible? And I didn't know the Quran in English. I just know how to recite like surahs and like verses of the Quran, but I didn't know what it meant. So I looked up on Google, and I got to some random verse that I didn't really know, and I read it out. And it was like, okay, right? There was nothing like amazing. And then she read her verse, and I remember the verse she read because now I know it and I've studied it. And it was Ephesians 2, and it's by grace you've been saved through faith. And I remember at the time, I was thinking, what does grace mean and what does faith mean? Because those two words are not in the Quran. There's not really the same thing. Grace, what is that? Mercy, yes, but not grace. So yeah, from then, that was around sort of like maybe February, March time, maybe a bit earlier, January, maybe something like that. Early on in the year, we'd be having these conversations about Islam and Christianity. Not many. I was very adamant. I was like, come on, Mom, like, I'm not going to turn like Christian. What? I'm not white.
So would that be your perception of what it would mean to be a Christian? Would it be to be westernized?
Yeah, sort of. Like I didn't really like. I'd studied Christianity at school, and like without being or sounding racist, like I'd always just assume.
Famous last words.
I'd always just assume that like being a Christian would just it's like the English guys are Christian and like you know like the white guys. And I'm a Muslim, like I'm brown. Like, you know, like, and I was sort of proud of being a Muslim. Not because I believed this thing was true, but because this is my identity. This is who I am. I'm a Muslim. And I'd go to school and we'd have like, we'd learn about Islam in religious studies, and I would get the highest grade in the class because I was, yes, I'm a Muslim. We'd learn about Christianity as well, but, you know, I wasn't really interested in it. So yeah, for me, being a Christian was very much a massive 180. It was not I was not open to Christianity at all.
So you're having those conversations over the phone, and you're starting to pick up these pieces about what Christianity was about. How did that develop?
Yeah. So, yeah, these conversations had been going on with me and this girl. Later down the year, I began to run into this guy called Cliff.
And we were talking about the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And those 4 tests, when you apply them to the Gospels, show that the Gospels are historically reliable.
I think this is sort of a new segment of the story now. So we've had me being raised in Islam. You know, I'd always been taught by my sister and by my mom and pleasing them, then doubting Islam a little bit.
Yeah.
And now we have this section of, hold on a minute, this is actually kind of a strong case for Christianity. This guy Cliff, I just ran into him on TikTok randomly, and he was debating a Muslim at the time. I can't remember the exact video, but I just remember the feeling, because I had never been taught. A lot of Muslims nowadays, at least when I have conversations with them, it's quite evident that they're taught things to defend their faith.
Yeah.
I was never taught anything to defend Islam, ever. I was never taught things about Christians. I was never taught how to refute the Trinity. I was never taught any of this because I never really went to the mosque.
Yeah.
And I never really was interested in it. But I very quickly began to realize from Cliff's videos and from his debates on college campuses that actually Islam doesn't have much of a backbone behind it. And you can imagine that, like, as someone that has never been told why the Quran is true, I've never been told the reasons why to believe in it. Now I'm looking at things why you shouldn't believe in it.
Yeah.
So if anything, my doubts for Islam got even more. And Cliff would talk about, you know, the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Oh, bro, that's such a good impression.
And, you know, like, he'd talk about eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life and this, that, and the other. And I'd be like, eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life? I thought the Bible was like the Quran. You know, because in the Quran, you know, Muslims believe that it's verbatim the word of Allah.
Yeah.
The word of God. This is what Allah speaks. But
And it's eternally existent as well.
exactly.
So there's a whereas in the New Testament or the Bible, you'd say that the writers were real people being superintended as they're witnessing events,
Yeah.
rather than those words existing from all eternity and
Yeah,
then
exactly.
being dropped
Yeah.
and given.
Yeah.
Um,
It is two different paradigms.
yeah,
And I didn't realize this. If anything, I was told that actually this was something not to believe the Bible, right? It's written by men, not written by God. So anyway, I just looked into this, and actually at the time, as a Muslim, right, growing up in school, I'd always been taught Jesus, and I actually thought he was crucified. But I didn't realize the Quran taught against Jesus was crucified.
yeah,
So I would watch Cliff and this Muslim, and the Muslim would be arguing that Jesus wasn't crucified. And I was like, what? What are you saying? Of course he was crucified.
and how do you know that?
And the reason I knew that was because I was taught it in school.
Yeah. So this isn't controversial as a statement to say Jesus was crucified.
Yeah, I just
Right.
thought it was fact. That for me, I just thought it was fact. I was taught it in
yeah.
school.
And that is like any historian trained in the relevant field
Yeah,
would say Jesus was crucified.
yeah,
Right. So that's a reason why I was taught that at school as well.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
any historian or religious education teacher
yeah,
should be saying, here's what scholars are saying, here's
Yeah.
what the historians say.
yeah, exactly. But I found Cliff really compelling. I just remember I found him really compelling. He was a really big part of my story. I think he's amazing even now. There's obviously there's a few things that we don't agree with. He's not a Herman Bavinck.
He's good at what he does, isn't he?
He's very good at what
he does.
He's good at what he does. He's good at what he does, right?
We'll recommend more
Yeah.
in-depth thinkers.
He is great as a starting point. I would say he is good because the arguments he uses are very rhetorical, very real arguments. And he just repeats the same arguments like 30 years. But I just remember like this Cliff guy is just cooking this Muslim guy. And that's when that point was the start of me watching Cliff over and over and over again. And I'd get more and more information about Jesus and the Gospels and this being true. And I remember I'd think to myself, this actually sounds kind of real.
Mm-hmm.
This sounds true. And I sort of stopped looking at Cliff for a little bit. Because my mum and my dad, there was a big argument between my family and the girl's family. And, because of that argument, I was like, gosh, I have to not look at Christianity now. I have to back to Islam. But actually, very quickly, I went back to Cliff. And he was presenting some really valid arguments, right? And I'd also be looking into, I'd be having conversations with the girl's parents about Christianity. I remember this one lunch that we had, we were talking about Christianity, talking about why you should believe in Christianity. And I sort of came to realize these truths. So for me, I had huge doubts now about Islam. And in fact, I hated Islam. I wanted nothing to do with it. I didn't want to be a Muslim anymore. I didn't know what I wanted to be, actually, to be honest, at the time. I just didn't want to be a Muslim. And I remember the girl that I was talking to, I knew she was going to church, obviously, and she mentioned that there was going to be a baptism service. And I kind of knew what baptism was. It was like when you get baptized, you become a Christian. I don't know. That's what I thought at the moment, at least. So I was like, you know what? Go on then. Let's get baptized.
Just get in the water.
Yeah, literally. I just
dived in.
Yeah, I did. And to be looking back in hindsight, I remember walking to the train station to go to the church, and I was like, this is the last day. This is the last day that I'll ever be a Muslim. This is the last day. And I couldn't wait. I was like, yes. I knew from that day my life would change forever. I knew it. And I was walking towards the train station. I got on the train, went to the church, came into the church, massive pool of water. And I had been having some conversations, right, with the girl's parents, and I'd been watching Cliff as well. So I sort of knew about who Jesus was, but I didn't really understand what the significance of it was, right? I didn't know the gospel. I didn't know that actually I'm a sinner. I need to be reconciled to God through the mediator, the great high priest, Jesus, who died for me and is the ultimate atonement for all sins. All I knew was, oh, Jesus died for my sins. Like, I knew that statement from RS in year 4. So I just,
You've also got an ulterior motive as well, because your current religion is stopping you from being with this girl.
Yeah.
It's something that you don't like the restrictions it's putting on in your life. So there's a sense of you're breaking free.
Oh yeah.
Which is probably what the motive, it was to break free.
Yeah.
Rather than to come into something new.
Exactly. I wanted to break free from Islam, from the stronghold that I have from my parents on me. I felt like I was in chains almost. I just wanted to get out of this thing, man. Yeah. Finally, I can actually just live my life and do what I want. Like, that's what I wanted to do. And the pastor took me aside and he made sure that I knew exactly what I was doing, because even to him he was like, goodness me, like
what's happened?
What's happened here? Like, because I'd never really shown any interest towards Christianity. Yeah. Remember, I was literally telling my girlfriend at the time, like, how I was so adamant, and my mum was like, oh, don't become a Christian, and of course I'm not going to become a Christian, Mum, of course I'm not going to become a Christian. And here I am in a church already the water is up to my knees. I'm wearing swimming trunks, and I've got two pastors either side of me holding my shoulders, and I'm thinking, oh my days, I'm about to get baptized.
Yeah.
And I think at that moment I realised this is actually real. Oh my days. And I got dunked, and I came out of the water, and I was a new person. Nah, I wasn't. Oh, I can't lie. That baptism was just like the most like nax. Like, it was. This is the thing. I always explain my testimony to people, and people genuinely. I always end at that baptism, but I, in hindsight, I do not think that's the end of the story.
No, by no means.
By no means is that the end of the story, because when I came out of that water, I didn't know the gospel. I didn't know the significance of the gospel, and I didn't realize just how true it was, and that actually I would die for this gospel. You know, I did not have that level of this is real, and this is so true, and this should change me.
Yeah.
No, for me it was, I need to get out of Islam. This is a very good route. Let's do it. And I got out of Islam, and I remember that day we went back to our friend's house, and me and my girlfriend were there with our friend. And I just remember I was like, I've done it. I'm out of Islam. My parents no longer have a stronghold over me. My girlfriend, I can probably marry her now.
Yeah.
At the time, I left my mum's house because my mum was realizing how much more I was growing towards this girl. And I was like, you know what, Mum, I'm going to leave. So I lived with my dad, who was a little bit less strict at the time. I was free. I was a free man. I could do whatever I wanted, and I was so happy at the time. That was a very happy day in my life.
So from that point onwards, you started to feel as though Christianity is more than just being broken free.
Yeah.
I guess what were some of the reasons that kept you in the faith?
So I think, from looking into the case for Christianity, which I believed was just so strong, there were just things that I just couldn't argue against.
Yeah.
Things that actually, looking back, I kind of been taught in RS, in like back in year 4, year 6, right? Like, for example, like all scholars, whether Christian or non-Christian, agree on these 4 or 5 things. You've got, firstly, the crucifixion of Jesus.
Yeah.
I'd already mentioned, like, the crucifixion of Jesus, I just thought was a fact, right? I didn't realize Muslims didn't believe in that. I was like, well, hold on a minute. Surely Jesus was crucified, therefore Islam is wrong. Like, that is just so clear.
Like, for example, like the great skeptic Bar Ehrman would say it's one of the most central facts that we know of the ancient world is the crucifixion.
Yeah.
As someone who debates against Christians, that's something that's not controversial to affirm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You also have the disciples having these experiences, believing to have seen a risen Jesus, right? Like, we have, you know, again, scholars like Bar Ehrman would all agree on this, you know, like, these people, the disciples, genuinely believed they saw Jesus. I think that's sort of fact number 2.
Yeah.
Then you've also got, right, these disciples went from being hopeless and believing actually, he's dead. And you get that in like the ending of Luke, right? You've got these people and they're walking and they're like, oh man, like they're talking and Jesus is like undercover and he's walks up to them and he's like, oh, what are you talking about, lads? And they're like, have you not heard? Have you been living under a rock? You know, this Jesus was crucified and they're hopeless.
Yeah.
They are utterly hopeless, and they are expecting this Messiah to save them from Rome and be victorious. But actually, they later realize that the Messiah was meant to die, and that's what Jesus had been saying. If you read the Gospel of Mark, Jesus says this repeatedly. So the disciples went from being hopeless to actually being bold and dying for this very gospel, this very fact. They believed that Jesus died on a cross and rose again after 3 days. That's sort of fact number 3. And again, it's agreed by people like Bar Ehrman. Then you've also got people like James and Paul, who at the time were a little bit skeptical of Jesus, right? Paul was known notoriously for his persecution of the church. later on you get these very people leading the church. James, the half-brother of Jesus. Imagine your own brother is killed on a cross, and then now you're worshipping him, and one of the leaders of that, like...
And being martyred for doing so.
Exactly.
As is recorded in Josephus. The Jewish historian records James being a martyr as a church leader.
So you've got all these facts, right? They're not by any means sort of biased towards the New Testament. This is found in the New Testament, but like you say, it's also found in secular documents like Josephus. You also got Pliny the Younger recording Christians worshipping a resurrected Jesus. For me, when I looked into this, not as in detail at the time, but definitely looking at Josephus, definitely looking at Tacitus, looking at these other secular guys, I did know who Bartman was at the time as well. I was like, actually, this is actually quite concrete evidence. Because for the Quran, all the evidence that I had been told was just the Quran. I'd also been told of like the miracles of the Quran as well later on. My dad used to send me these videos of like someone talking to AI about like the Quran, and AI would like give a response about like all the scientific miracles in the Quran, and is that I didn't find that particularly compelling.
There's a difference, isn't there, between having a historic event that you can look back and say this is something that happened, and someone else saying, well, I've got this text, and I believe it to be divine because it has divine properties. What about that text would make you think it's got divine properties? That seems like a strange criteria.
Exactly. And at the time, as a new Christian at this time, I continued to look into this. I was more interested at the time in apologetics, because my mindset at that time was get away from Islam, get away from Islam, get away from Islam. I wanted nothing to do with it. I did not want this to be true. Please don't be true, Islam, please. Because I'd gone so far at this point, right? I was like, I can't go back. I've been baptized. I've left my mum's house. I can't go back now.
And then I guess the other side of the coin is that when you're a Muslim, you struggled with the idea of obedience. You struggled with the idea of God is telling me to do these commands, and I think they're arbitrary. How did your thinking on that transform as you were growing as a Christian?
It definitely changed. As I was going to church week in, week out, as much as I could, I had to keep it quite secret, with my dad. I'd always have to sneak out of the house on a Sunday morning. I learned things about, the Bible, and I would actually, because of, like you said, looking back at something that has actually happened, I could have confidence in the future. I could actually think, right, Jesus was crucified and he rose again. If that's true, then what he said is true. And if what he said is true, then I ought to follow it. That was my reasoning at the time. All my faith was based on that. If that did not happen, and Paul talks about it in 1 Corinthians 15, if his crucifixion and resurrection did not happen, then your faith is in vain, because ultimately Christ died for nothing, right? The whole gospel is that Jesus died and rose again to take atonement for all sins. If that doesn't happen, then what are you putting your faith in? If that didn't happen, then Christianity is just nothing.
Nax.
If you take Christ out of Christian, you're left with Ian.
I was just quoting Andy Bannister. But it was more than that, because your view on obedience changed. How so?
I followed the Bible and Christianity not simply to please anyone. My parents obviously were not Christian.
They weren't pleased.
As I grew in the church, as I went to church more and more, I was being persecuted for this. My dad didn't let me go to church. He knew there was something going on. They're like, every Sunday morning I'm busy, come on. I was persecuted for this, and it got really bad at one point. Like sometimes social services got involved, and my life was
because you were 17.
I was 17. I was still under
17.
18 now at this point. I was. Oh man, it was year 13, and I was doing my A levels. I did 4 A levels, going to school every day, obviously, going to training. I was like, this was like hell. Like I was being persecuted so hard, and my dad knew that I was doing this, and he'd stop me from going to training. He'd threaten me with all this other stuff, and I'd still follow it because I really believed this was true. So as a Muslim, I'd always wanted to please my parents. That was what brought me joy. If my parents weren't pleased, ultimately I didn't get any joy. Whatever I'd do, whether it would be my studies, if I'd get a good grade, like in my science test, and I'd say, Mum, look, I got 90%, and she didn't care, that 90% would mean nothing. I'd just be like, oh, great. I guess on to the next. With Islam, it was the same thing, right? It was every time that I'd learn something about the Quran, recite a surah or whatever, I'd come back to my parents and it would please them, and I'd get really happy from it. And that's where my joy came from, pleasing my parents, thinking that I was somehow the guy, like, yeah, come on, I'm actually doing this. But now my joy came from something else. My joy came from the confidence that I had in the gospel. I no longer saw obeying God as something that I had to do to gain his righteousness or to gain his grace, but rather it was the other way round. I had gained his grace and I had gained salvation. So what am I to do? I'm to follow this. I'm to go all in, right? Paul says, I've been crucified with Christ, so it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. I had been brought out of the pit of hell, brought out of slavery, and I really believe that. I'd been brought out of slavery into light, out of the dominion of darkness into the light, and I could finally see. And that brought so much joy, that I was like, I need to follow this. I would see my sin, and I always knew I had this sin. Even when I was a Muslim, I would look at the life that I was living. I struggled with lust, I struggled with lying, I struggled with all sorts of horrible sins that you can imagine. But this gospel that I believed in at the time, looking at Jesus, I grew to really hate my sin. And actually, I wanted to live a life that pleased him. I wanted to please God, and I wanted to ultimately follow him. And that brought ultimate fulfillment.
Yeah. If you've been brought from darkness into the light, why would you want to then go back to darkness?
Exactly.
Right? As though that's more enjoyable. Why would the light not be more enjoyable?
Exactly. And for me, I think this is where the word Christian hedonism comes from. Later on in my Christian walk, when I came to university, really was when I really grew in my faith. Because at the time, when I came out of Islam and into Christianity, that my theology wasn't that, good. I didn't really understand major theological issues in the church. I didn't understand how to interpret scripture. I didn't understand a lot of other things that made my life quite difficult, especially when interacting with Muslims and interacting with people that I was trying to talk to about Christianity. I didn't actually know that much. I was just like, oh, Jesus loves you, and the common phrase. When I came to university, I really started sort of encountering these questions more. And that's when I met you as well. And you introduced me to John Piper. And this term Christian hedonism is something that he uses so much. Yeah. Sort of, you are most satisfied. No, God is most glorified when you are most satisfied in him. Yeah. And that ultimately is how I felt. Especially when I listened to his sermons, I was like, this is so true.
Yeah. But it's hedonistic because it's a pursuit of joy. Yet it's Christian hedonism because it's saying there's more joy and holiness in living for Christ than there is in living for sin.
For the world, yeah.
Which is, because the Christian view would also be that something's happened to you. Yeah. You've not just made a decision.
Yeah.
But Jesus said, you can't see the kingdom of heaven unless you've been born again.
Yeah.
Given new heart, new desires. you start to want things that you didn't want before.
Yeah.
Things that maybe would have been boring, arbitrary,
Yeah.
and now things you desire, you want.
Yeah. It was so weird because like, as I grew and I grew and I grew in my faith in Christianity, and I guess this is a different section now,
Yeah.
right? Because now I've been a new Christian. I've been exploring different arguments, apologetics, the 4 minimal facts argument, Cliff. I'd still be watching Cliff at this point. I was also watching a lot of like debates, like James White with Muslims. I was really interested in this kind of stuff, apologetics wise. But our friendship really grew on the back of me responding to my family, because actually my brother-in-law was the first to find out that I was a Christian. And the way it happened was I was on a bus. It was Easter, and I was on my way, I think it was to church or to training or something. I was going on the bus, and there was a TikTok on my phone that was the Passion of the Christ, Jesus literally being crucified, and it was saying, this happened, blah, 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 blah. I got on the bus, and I went upstairs, and the bus started moving, and I fell over, and my phone dropped, and I was like, oh no, I picked it up. Went to training, went to church, whatever.
And for context as well, you see that the way this guy bops around, it's as though every day he's like a year 7 that's got food tech and PE, and like you can imagine the aura loss of this guy with like 7 bags on his back, stumbling down the bus.
I know. I dropped my phone and my bag. Oh my days! I literally almost fell over. But yeah, I didn't really think of anything. I came back home in the evening. I was on the phone to my girlfriend, and I went on TikTok, and my inbox was like so many messages. So I went to it, and my brother-in-law's texted me. I'm like, what is this? Like 10 notifications, what? So I go on it, and I'd sent that video to him at the time. It said sent at this time, and I was like, hold on a minute. I was on my way to training at that time. That can't be, no way. It must have sent on the bus. So I was like, no, this is so bad. Because I wanted to hide it from my family. I knew it was inevitably going to come out, but I was like, no, please, no.
Especially not in that way.
I know.
Like you want to have a conversation rather than just send a TikTok.
I know. His response was basically, you realise this never happened? And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, the Gospel of Barnabas, blah, 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 blah. I'd never heard of this.
Yeah.
At the time, I was like, has he just cooked me? So, apparently the Gospel of Barnabas doesn't record Jesus being crucified, but instead has Judas being crucified in Jesus' place. I'd never heard of this argument before. I just searched it up on TikTok and got a quick answer and was like, right, this is just complete nonsense. It's just a Gnostic gospel that's not as reliable as Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I posed that argument back to him, and we had this discussion of Islam and Christianity, and this was the first time that I had conversations like this. And we'd have the next morning, we had a huge conversation on the phone, and I thought I cooked him so hard, but I actually didn't, because I didn't really know much what I was talking about. We continued to have those conversations, and I remember there was this one particular conversation that we had where I got cooked so hard, it's scary. I went in my room and I put my knees to the floor and I was like, please, Lord, please tell me you're real. Please tell me you're real. And this was a very big moment for me, because I was like, I had just been cooked so hard by my brother-in-law, and I was like, I need to look into this, man.
What if you're wrong?
I know, what if I'm wrong? I've left my mum. I've left everything. I've been baptized into a church. I've done so much. There's no going back now. I have to look into this more. Yeah. And this was in the summer. So I came to uni, fast forward, met you. We'd still be having these conversations. I'd still get cooked. I was growing and growing in my knowledge, but I was like, this guy's so cold, oh my days. And I remember I'd just be posing all my questions to you. There was one particular time we had a chat, and he cooked me again, and I went upstairs and I was really upset. I was really upset. I was about to cry, and I remember I called Tom and I was like, oh, bro, I'm actually like, I got cooked so hard. Like, and I was posing all the questions to him and I was like, he brought up this argument apparently that Jesus is contingent. He's a human being, so he dies, so he can't be God. How do I answer that? Like, what am I? And he was like, his response every time was like, "Oh, really? Is that so?" Oh, that's so.
I remember that because I was sort of cooking dinner at the time, and it was like, oh yeah, is that right? The classic script.
Yeah.
Oh, nothing new then.
I thought these arguments were really strong, and I brought them to Tom, and he answered them, and he gave me more arguments. He brought me actually an argument that's like, oh, well, actually, Allah is contingent on his creation if he's to be a relational, loving God. And I was like, wow, that's a really good point, Tom. So I brought it to my brother-in-law, and he didn't really understand it, but I still kind of got cooked. Like, nothing really changed too much. But I think what really changed was when I started interacting more at the Christian Union at university. I started coming to Tom's house and we'd read the Bible, and he would encourage me to actually read the Bible because I'd never really gone out of my way to go, right, let's read the Bible, let's read all of this and let's understand the gospel. I was still in a mode of get out of Islam, apologetics, focus on arguments against Islam, arguments for Christianity. I knew so many arguments at this point, but I actually didn't even know any theology or any sort of like biblical theology, anything. I just knew like apologetics, and I used to watch on YouTube like people like God Logic, people like David Wood against Islam, and I didn't really understand the biblical story. Or how significant the gospel was.
Yeah, and it's important because that objection that you got, that Jesus is contingent, because God enters creation, that is there's a biblical answer, there's a theological answer.
Exactly.
Right. If you had a correct understanding of what Christians would call the hypostatic union, where Christ has two natures, the eternal Son of God takes on an additional nature. That fits itself nicely in the Bible storyline, where you have this promise that God is going to dwell with his people, God's going to come to his temple. You have this promise that you have this constant idea of you have a God who's transcendent, high and lifted up, yet dwells with us, yet comes to us. If you have that track, then God becoming man, who's made in the image of God, makes more sense. But if it's merely apologetics, then you're divorced from the system.
The apologetics should come from the scripture, and we've said this before, right? Like, the apologetics should come from the scripture. And so that's what Tom had always told me, and I was really, because I saw how he did it as well, and I was really inspired, right, by him. And I think that's a really good testament to how important Christian discipleship is. Because at the time, I saw him as like a mentor and someone to look up to, and I still do. And when I started, he was like, read Isaiah, read John, and I was like, do you reckon John's cold?
Yeah, we quote that so much. Do you reckon that's cold? John, surely John's not that cold.
Is it cold?
Surely God Logic's better than that.
I was like, is this actually like worth my time? And I actually started, and I just remember, because he used to give me books as well, he still does, gives me books. The Forgotten Trinity by James White. I read a whole chapter on John 1, and then read a John 1 in the Bible, and then looked at the footnote. He got me an ESV study Bible. And I was like, oh my days. And I remember I was just like, this is so cold. And I'd read John 1, and then I was reading Isaiah, and then I started reading Luke, and then I started reading Romans. And over time, I kept reading, watching sermons, actual proper biblical sermons, like people like John Piper, people like Voddie Baucham, people like Timothy Keller. And I started really grappling with this biblical truth. And as I grew in this, I don't know when this happened, but I think it was about sometime in September, there was a time when Tom and I were reading, I think it was Isaiah 6, and we were reading in the evening, and when Isaiah sees a vision of the Lord, he sees the Lord of hosts on the throne, and he falls out on his knees and he says, "Woe is me, I'm a man of unclean lips." And I remember Tom was telling me the context of like the 6 woes in the previous chapter, and this is the 7th woe. Woe is me.
Yeah.
And
because there was 6 woes against society. So it was like the society is doing X, the society is heroes at drinking wine.
Yeah.
They're greedy, they're X, Y, and Z. 6 of them. Here's what's going on in the culture, and then he sees the law and he says, "Oh no, woe is me."
Yeah.
And obviously 7's the number of completion in the Bible, so it's like the 7th finger is pointed at him.
Exactly. And I remember I was like, oh my days, that's so cold. So from that point, I just really read, and I'd never been reading before, ever. Like the only books that I'd read before were like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So in all the books that I've read, which aren't that many, by the way, I've read Harry Potter, all of the books of Harry Potter, all 7 of them. The Forgotten Trinity by James White. A Spiritual Call to Reformation by D.A. Carson. Mortification of Sin by John Owen, and so on. Like, it just is so weird, but like, I just was absolutely, perpetually enchanted by these.
I have found the Christian answer to this question just completely and perpetually enchanting.
Truths. Oh, I take the mick out of him for that statement. But like, I was just like, this is amazing, and I just, as time grew, just loved it, and that was the joy that I got. This is true, and this is amazing, and I have been truly redeemed out of slavery. That's what redemption means. That's where the word comes from. Come out of slavery. That's really how I felt. I've been liberated from this.
Yeah. So I guess your family starts to find out.
Yeah.
So I guess your dad finds out first.
My brother-in-law found out.
Yeah, your brother-in-law has, and then your dad.
Yeah. So when my dad found out, it came from a YouTube video that I posted, because I had an athletics YouTube channel that I used to post on. I don't really post on it that much anymore, but I sent the video to him, and in one of the clips, it's me training, and I was doing like hurdle hops. I was about to do an exercise, and I went like this as a joke because it was a bit of a dangerous exercise. And my dad saw it, and he was like, "Why are you doing the cross before you're about to?" And like at the time, I was thinking, I'm not gonna cover it up. I actually want to tell him this is the time. And the day before, I do remember I was talking to my girlfriend's mum at the time, and I was like, because my dad was sending me Islamic stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to tell him. I really want to tell him, but I don't know how to tell him. I really do believe it was God's sovereign plan that my dad was to find out. And exactly the way he found out, and the day after that conversation, he just was like, "We need to have a chat about this." I remember in the car, it came up, I think a week after, and I was just really bold. I was like, "Dad, I've read the Gospels, and I am a Christian because I believe that Jesus rose again. He died and rose again, and I honestly believe that you should read the Gospels as well."
Yeah.
I was like, "What am I doing? I'm telling my dad to read the Gospels."
How on earth did he respond to that?
He was surprised. I think he was so shocked.
Yeah.
But actually, his reaction was, at that one moment, very good.
Yeah.
He was like, "Habibi, why are you a Christian? Why?" And I was like, "Because I believe this is true, Dad. This is true. This really happened. And if this really happened, then what Jesus said is really true. And if what Jesus says is really true, then I should follow it." And I remember I'd ask my dad, "Why do you follow Islam?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, it's about being a good person, this, that, and the other." And so that's how he found out. Pretty good way for him response, better than I expected. couple of weeks pass by, it marinates with my dad, and he gets really angry.
Yeah.
Really angry. Really angry towards not just me, but towards my girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
He was like, you're gonna be disowned, because if you continue like this and you marry that girl, I don't want anything to do with you. I just remember I was in Dubai at the time.
Yeah.
And when he said that, when he said things like that, he said things like, you know, like, you'll no longer be my son, things like that. Texts that I'd receive. I was supposed to be on a holiday. I just felt like my heart just sink. I was like, man, this is. And to make matters worse, my mum didn't even know.
Yeah.
At the time, so it was like, imagine when I tell my mum. Oh my days.
Yeah. What happened when you told your mum?
So when I told my mum about 2 weeks afterwards, when we came back, or maybe a bit more than that, and she found out. This is in April of this year. She found out, and quite the opposite. She was absolutely appalled, really stressed out. I could tell, but I was like, no, come on, let's try and preach the gospel here.
Yeah.
And she was having none of it. She was having none of it. She was like, you're stressing me out. You're stressing me out. But she was also in denial, because for her, she was like, I'm just seeking. I'm just looking around. Little does she know,
Yeah.
I'm reading like theology, right? Like right now in my room, I've got like a little book collection of like the theology of the New Testament.
Yeah.
And like big books on theology, and like, why would I read that if I wasn't interested at least in Christianity? I've got nothing like that in Islam.
Both started a YouTube channel.
Exactly. Like she has no idea. And if she's watching this, I'm kind of cooked, guys, by the way. But yeah, she was in denial that I was a Christian, but I really was. And she was saying to me, if you really are a Christian, then our relationship is going to have to change.
Wow.
And I remember when she said that, I was like, oh my days. And I think I called you.
Yeah.
And I called my girlfriend's mum. And I was like, I felt so upset.
Yeah.
I felt so upset.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was a big one when I told my mum. Yeah, man.
Because I knew how close you were with your mum.
Yeah.
And to know that relationship was going to change. What was it she said? It was something like, when you're under my roof, you're my responsibility.
Yeah.
But it's no more than that.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
The relationship dynamic would change. It would be no longer would we be best friends. It would be, you're just my responsibility, you're my son, that's it. Nothing else.
And then your sister who taught you?
My sister found out quite early.
Yeah.
Because when my brother-in-law found out, which was the year earlier, he must have told my sister. I think I already saw a change in my sister's behaviour, really dramatically. Even now, to this day, me and my sister, not the best. Things have gotten better, but not the best. So it's been really hard, especially with my mum and my sister.
You've made a massive sacrifice. You've been very bold and brave.
I know.
Why? Like, why? Why on earth is it worth it?
Because like I've said multiple times, in this video, if Jesus rose from the dead, then he's got some reliability, right? He's not just blowing smoke when he says things. What he said about himself has to be true. And if what he said is true, then what am I doing, right? I need to follow this. Everyone needs to follow this. People watching this video, if Jesus really rose from the dead, and I invite you to look into this, if he really rose from the dead, and if you look at what he said about himself, if you look about what he said about following him and being born again, if those things are true, I don't think I need to say much else. I had no choice. I had to. That was especially when I discovered all of these different things and studying the different books in the Bible as I'm continuing to do so now.
Yeah.
No choice.
Yeah, man. Alright. It's art. So when I bar, man, it's straight from the heart. Countless times when I worked on my craft. Shine my light so I see in the dark. Idiots, man, I see them from afar. I'm a master of ceremony, trying to make his mark. I dreamed and I'm acting fast. Them degenerates can't be asked. They got here first, but the wave won't last. Not a cool room and they ain't got class. Basic bars, decent beat selection. Bro, you're having a laugh. These comparisons are so jarring. Sad when a man is still masking. True intentions are lasting. Heard what you said in passing. You heard the Samson, he's decent. The kid's icy, cold or freezing. I do this for those I'm